I was confused in real time watching this movie.
I was confused in real time. That's the perfect way to describe that. Yeah, the movie made no sense, but it was a hell of a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, so that's Jim. Overall, what did you think of Superdragon versus Superman?
Patrick, the movie made no sense, but overall, it was a really fun watch. What do you think, buddy?
For the most part, I agree. I think there were several scenes that really dragged. Like some of those, again, it's mostly in the middle. Or I guess towards the end. It's the clowns. It's those scenes that just go on. Like, we know there's going to be a fight scene. Why are we just messing around for 5 minutes before there's actually a fight scene? It's sort of the same story as the chase scenes, except the chase scenes, however boring they might be, are more exciting than watching those clowns just jump.
Yeah.
But overall, yes, I did somewhat enjoy the movie. It's stupid. It's fun. You know, the dubbing is atrocious. I got a lot of enjoyment out of Josh Gad and like all these other actors that looked like real celebrities, like the John Madden rapist, and Lionel Richie Superman, who's probably the least. I think John Madden looks more like John Madden, and Josh Gad definitely looks more like Josh Gad than Superman looks like Lionel Richie. But I'll take it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's not a wall-to-wall entertaining film, but it certainly has its highlights. I thought most of the fight scenes are very well executed for the most part. Mm-hmm. I want to introduce to you, Jim, a new segment on this show, and this will not come up every single episode.
Okay.
But this is something I have not briefed you on this, listeners. No. This is brand new information. But we're going to play a game. It's a game show called Has Quentin Tarantino Seen This Movie? And this is going to be... We're only going to do this for some of the more obscure or forgotten movies, because we don't, if we're talking... Because what are all the movies we know Quentin Tarantino has seen? Like, obviously, he's seen... Like, I'm talking about movies that he's specifically spoken about. Game of Death is... They do the Game of Death suit in Kill Bill. And I know he's said The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is the best directed film of all time, which might be his best opinion. I know he's seen the remake of Psycho because he famously said it's better than the original Psycho, which I think by extension means he hasn't seen the original Psycho. I'm going to make that assumption. And that's also the worst film opinion he's ever had. But I want to discuss this with some of our lesser known movies, either obscure or just kind of forgotten movies. I know he's seen Dracula's Daughter because in the Eli Roth documentary series, A History of Horror or whatever it was called, they were talking about some lesbian vampire movie or something, and this is one of the few times where Eli Roth shut the hell up, because overall my complaint of that documentary series was that Eli Roth spoke more than his interview participants. But like, they're talking about lesbian vampire movies, probably The Hunger with Susan Sarandon and Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie, which is a famous lesbian vampire movie, but Tarantino said, like, oh, the lesbian vampire movies that go back to the 1930s. And Eli Roth's like, really? They do? And then he's like, yeah, Dracula's Daughter. Because there is a lesbian-charged scene in the 1936 film Dracula's Daughter. It's like, okay, I'm glad that Tarantino brought that up, and I'm glad that Eli Roth shut the fuck up for a second so we could hear someone talk about it. But so those are some examples of movies I know Quentin Tarantino has seen. Has Quentin Tarantino seen Emmanuelle?
I mean, he must have. Because everybody saw Emmanuelle.
Well, yeah, but it was like a big hit in the 70s. Like, Tarantino is like a 12-year-old kid, right, when it comes out? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you know what, I like...
Is there enough feet action in Emmanuelle to pique his interest? That's the question.
There's definitely feet.
Well, every movie has feet. Is Tarantino a big fan of the Flintstones? The Flintstones movie where they use their feet to propel their cars.
What's grosser, being turned on by the Flintstones or liking anime? And I don't mean sexually. I mean,
well, there's no other way to like anime. They're all perverts. But I'll say the Flintstones. Okay. If you're turned on by the Flintstones, there's something you belong in some kind of
home
place where they're going to lock you up and throw away the key. But yeah, so Emmanuelle, I will say, I think it's more likely that Tarantino has seen Bruce Lee versus Superman than he's seen Emmanuelle, believe it or not.
Now, see, I'd agree with you.
Even though Emmanuelle is the far less obscure film in this case. But this, Bruce Lee versus Superdragon or whatever, this movie is far more Tarantino up his alley than Emmanuelle is. And again, if Emmanuelle had more, foot massage scenes, I feel more confident about Tarantino having seen Emmanuelle.
Well, and I feel like, if you're watching Game of Death and all kinds of schlocky martial arts movies, I feel like this was on his radar at some point.
Well, and I want to say, you mentioned schlocky, and certainly, but can I just say, this makes Game of Death look like North by Northwest. Like North by Northwest
absolutely.
is a high-class film compared to this. or excuse me, Game of Death is Casablanca. It's the classiest of films.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's something I was going to point out as well. Like Game of Death comes off as a real movie compared to this.
Yeah, it's got the funny Photoshop stuff, but that's all in the first half for the most part. And then you get the 90-year-old dummy getting thrown off the roof with the Bruce Lee scream.
But it also has real Bruce Lee dead in a coffin.
Yes,
which is also
which
great.
Is arguably
which has
more
real Bruce
exploitive
Lee than this movie.
It's more exploitive than anything in this movie. Which I wanted to say. So shit, which movie was this? I have to think. There was a trivia thing I know I saw. But I don't know which of these two movies it was. But okay, so Emmanuelle, overall, the musical score felt very prog rock to me. That 70s kind of prog rock, and I did see that some part of that film uses music from the English prog rock band King Crimson. So I just wanted to point that out for all you King Crimson aficionados out there. I mean, they're not an obscure band. I've never listened to them. But I did want to say, so the music fact, this is IMDb trivia, Superdragon versus Superman. Some cuts of Superdragon versus Superman contain music from The Return of the Pink Panthers, so the score by Henry Mancini in the Peter Sellers, Christopher Plummer film. And I want to say that was not the cut that was on Tubi, because I would have recognized that music immediately. And I wish we saw that cut, just because I think this type of film deserves to be as exploitive as it can be. We're talking like like the Bruno Mattei movies. He made a lot of Italian horror movies. He made some of the Black Emmanuelle movies, I think, but he made Hell of the Living Dead, which is a zombie film, very much a ripoff of Dawn of the Dead, and it includes the entire musical score from Dawn of the Dead, from the band Goblin, which is completely unlicensed, and I think that's one of the charms of that movie. And I will say the clones of Bruce Lee, I want to say, has the Rocky theme in it.
Really?
I know it has some music from Rocky. I don't know if it has Gonna Fly Now, the Academy Award-winning song from Rocky, but it has some music from Rocky, I know, and I thought I got a big kick out of that. So I wish we could have seen or heard some rip-off music in this movie. Maybe we did, but it wasn't music that I recognized.
Also, the chase scenes must have been so slow because they were actually filming on roads that were in use, right? Because there's no way they blocked off stretches of highway or anything.
Probably, but it didn't stop the French Connection from creating one of the greatest chase scenes ever, even though they almost killed a baby in the middle of that scene. So it's like there are ways to do good chase scenes on scenes that you don't have the permits to, on roads that you don't have the permits to film on. This movie just didn't pull it off.
They didn't pull anything off.